All righty, we are going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Today is May 4th, 2022. It's 6:02 p.m. I want to acknowledge that we have quorum of the Equity Board members, and I would like to ask Monica to do roll call for us.
Good evening, Shay and board members. This is Monica Negrilla. And yes, I would love to, let's do a roll call tonight. I know we have one board member who is absent today, Ray Manahan. He's absent, excused. And for the first part of the meeting, we heard from Kelly. Kelly Mann is actually on the phone, I believe. We'll double check here in a moment. But she will join on camera in as soon as she can in the next 20 or so minutes. So with that though, let's do the roll call. I'll call your name and please indicate that you're here when you hear your name. Christina Bonce.
Hi everyone.
Thank you, Christina. Good evening. Megan Richley.
Here.
Hi, Megan. Good evening. Alyssa Stewart.
Here.
Hi, Alyssa. Lorna Gilmore.
Here.
Thank you, Lorna. Helen Kibenge. I don't see Helen here, but I do know that we've been communicating last week and she's been traveling, so she may be absent due to work travel. We'll circle back if she's able to join later tonight. Lucrecia Choto, also I don't hear her. I know that she's been also traveling internationally, so she may or may not be able to join tonight. We spoke Ray Manahan, he is absent tonight. Tony Curry.
I'm here.
Hi, Tony. Good evening.
And quick thing, did you get my message, you and Shay, about
You're gonna leave a little bit early tonight. Yes, you're gonna be here for the first 45 minutes. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
And Shay Fleming, our chair.
I'm here.
You're here. And then Jacob Rubenstein, he is gonna be also absent tonight. He's not able to make it. Pretty Melody Pan.
Here.
Hi, Pretty, thank you. And Kelly Mann, I'm gonna check because I do see a phone number and I wanna make sure to see if the phone number with 425773, do you mind unmuting and introducing yourself? I'm gonna also try to unmute you. I unmuted you on my end. Good evening. Can you introduce yourself? Once again, the call number 425773. My guess is that it's Kelly because I have her cell phone number, but I still don't see the last 4 digits, so I would love to confirm. We cannot hear her, so we'll check back in. Again, I'm guessing it's Kelly and I'm hoping she can hear us. We just cannot hear her. And also in the attendance, I see we have Sophia, who is our volunteer intern in high school. And that concludes the roll call for this evening. Shay, thank you.
Thank you so much. And we do have quorum. So before we move through the agenda items, I would like to go ahead and just give us a few housekeeping rules just to make sure that everyone knows what we're doing and how we're communicating with each other. Because of course, due to the virtual format of today's meeting, we want to start with those few guidelines to help everybody through. So essentially, due to the governor's proclamation 2028 related to COVID-19 emergency and open public meetings, this meeting is being held remotely via WebEx or phone. If you'd like to speak or participate in discussion, we ask that you please be concise, make sure that your information or questions are relevant, and that you are courteous and fair to others. We also want to remind you that if you have a question, please write that in the chat box, except do not include the question itself, just because if we have some people on the phone, we want to make sure they know what your questions are. Additionally, if you have any comments, please also only write comment in the box, and then we'll address you so that you can make your comment. Lastly, we want to just ask that everyone remember that our interpreters need us to speak slowly so that we can make sure that they can get the information over to anyone who needs their service. All right, and if we're ready, we will go ahead and move through the approval of, or I'm sorry, we'll ask if there's any public comment. Monica, did we have anything that you know of?
And actually, you're okay with the approval of the minutes, but now for public comments, if we would like, no, we didn't have anyone sign up for public comments, and I don't see anyone else in attendance either. So thank you.
Fantastic. All right, then the next thing we'll do is look at the minutes from April 6, 2022, and have you all take a quick look at it just to allow us to approve that minutes. Alrighty, and does anyone have any amendments that we need to make to the minutes? No, nothing as of yet. Alrighty. Then we will move forward. If there is no amendments or objections to the minutes, I'd like to propose the minutes be unanimously approved. Alrighty, then we are ready to move on. All right, next on our agenda, we have some equity framework training. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Monica to introduce our guest.
Thank you very much, Shay. Good evening again, board members. I have the privilege to introduce to you tonight Shannon Kelly Ray, who is our equity consultant at the city. The city started working with Shannon, I believe last year was the first year, and we continue through this year. Shannon helped the city with conducting trainings for staff. She will continue this year with conducting training for boards and commissions, and she also worked with City Council. She's here tonight to work with all of you on the equity framework proposal for City Council, provide more in-depth training. And also, I'm excited that we are going to have a chance to collaborate in the upcoming months and the rest of the year with Shannon. As we, the board, we are going to dive into conducting that gap analysis and an assessment for the equity at the city. And so I'm excited that we are going to collaborate with her in the upcoming months as well on that. But for tonight, board members, I'm going to invite here Shannon to conduct the training with you and have a discussion. Really, our hope for tonight is you've been discussing this item with Stephanie Johnson, our HR director, for the last few months. But our hope tonight is that as you dive deeper into talking about an option for a framework, I'm hoping that at the end of the meeting, you're going to feel comfortable making a recommendation for a pilot project for City Council to consider. Again, as I think you made recommendations already before, at this point, we know that perhaps there might not be a perfect example or a perfect option, but I think the city is really, really eager to start somewhere, start using a tool, look into what's working and what's not working by testing it out. And then perhaps they can come back with a report and we can just improve that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that our recommendation as humble staff is for us not to get caught up in perfection, but really just try something, because each department is eager to really apply an equity lens to their work, but they just need some direction in the framework from us. So is that a good start, Shannon, before I hand it to you and I start sharing my screen for the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much and welcome, Shannon. It's just such a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you. I'll say just to continue with Monica's introduction. I am a Washington State-based business. I have a team globally of 13. Locally, the city of Issaquah is my 5th city. I work with Kirkland, Redmond, Bothell, Kenmore, and as well as Issaquah. part of the project that we do is that we'll be doing, and I've done with other cities, in addition to creating equity policy, but for the city of Issaquah, it is to do an organizational equity assessment to figure out what it is that we're trying to solve for. And part of that is to look at what the city is doing and based on an international best standard of equity and inclusion best practices, to really figure out not only what are we trying to solve for, but what should that solution be? What does the road forward look like? And people think that diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and social justice is about the warm and fuzzies. They often think that it's about changing the trajectory or narrative of how someone feels. And how someone feels is important, but I think most important is to be able to have tangible, actionable results that are measurable, to be able to identify where inequity exists and use both qualitative and quantitative data to figure out what an end goal is, and then have a specific set of things or actions that you do to accomplish those goals. Now, an equity board is an incredibly important collaborative partner in that effort, but an equity board also can serve as, what I like to say, oftentimes in an organization, you function in the way that for some people at the federal level, they've said the Congressional Black Caucus does. You become then the conscience of the organization. You hold the mirror up, you hold them accountable, and you demand that they live up to the promises that they've met to those folks who are marginalized, for those folks who experience disparate treatment or even worse, disparate outcomes. And so having a tool like this framework that we're going to be using with some case studies allows for leaders within an organization or decision makers or influencers to be able to hold up the mirror to themselves as individuals and as a collective and collaborative body to start reassessing, to do some reflexive listening, but also to start being very intentional in how you look at an issue, both from the ground level, but also from 30,000 feet. Because it's important to make sure that we're asking ourselves some critically important questions. Whose voices are around the table? Whose voices are missing? Are we considering all options? Are we thinking about how history and sometimes social, cultural, political, and economic challenges may separate a community? And are we being very conscious and very intentional to make sure that we do no harm and that we're working to mitigate risk when we feel that we are? So this tool is really an opportunity for us to have a framework, to have an opportunity for us to ask ourselves some questions that I think critically important as you adjudicate issues, as you think about issues before making decisions. So let's go then there we go, to the agenda. So I'd love for us to just go quickly through, and I'd like just an introduction and maybe 10 seconds for everybody in the room. So if you could tell me who you are and what is it that brings you, because you could be doing a lot of other stuff with your time, but who are you and what brings you to the equity board? So I'll lead off and say, my name is Shannon Kelly Ray, and I am here seated with the equity board tonight because it is my goal to ensure that you have all the tools and resources to make very sound decisions for all of the community and represent the voices and center the experiences, perspectives, insights, and goals and hopes and dreams of all of the community in a way that everyone is reflected and considered in government decision making. So that's me. And if you don't mind, let's figure out who all of you folks are. So we could start in alphabetical order. Elisa, who are you and why are you here with the equity board?
Hi, so very good. I'm Elisa, and the reason that I'm here is I feel that it's important for us to participate for people of color to participate on local level as well as national level and all levels in between to achieve the equity that we're seeking.
Thank you. Christina?
Hi everyone, my name is Cristina Bonce. I'm here because I want to feel that I belong, and also because I want to push my daughters and family to belong to this community and to be sure that everyone feel like that. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Harry?
I'm the Spanish interpreter
I'm
for
sorry.
Cristina Bonce. Nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you so much. Helen?
Hi, I'm really privileged and absolutely honored to be part of this group. I'm here. I'm an immigrant from Uganda. I live in Issaquah, and I'm here to immerse myself in the community and be a useful member of it. And one of that is by being part of this board to bring the experiences that represent some of the Africans who have immigrated and live in this community, and to share where we come from so it is made known. Just to learn as well from the other people in the community where I have not lived and the experiences that I have not had, to be a more useful member of the community. And for my children, I have two beautiful girls who are living and growing up in here, and to extend that to them so that they are better contributors of the society they're going to grow up in.
Good. Thank you so much. Hillary?
Hi there. I'm the other Spanish interpreter for Christina, and she doesn't sound like she needs us because her English is fabulous.
Good. Thank you so much. Lorna?
Hi, my name is Lorna Gilmore, and I am a part of this board because I want to work towards ensuring that the city of Issaquah and our community is more welcoming. As our community is growing more diverse, I just want to make sure that we're having conversations around race, about culture, about religion, to make sure that we are welcoming to our different incoming, our more diverse community.
Thank you so much. Lucrecia?
Hello, Shannon. Yes, my name is Lucrecia Choto, and I joined the Equity Board because I believe that I have responsibility to our community, and I want to exercise my social capital to ensure that the information and knowledge that I hold and that I'm privileged to have is used for the betterment of our community. In particular, I'm very interested in ensuring that any form of government in the city of Issaquah takes into the account the voices of people who are typically not included at the table. And I apologize for my camera. I came home to a camera that is broken, and I just realized that a little bit ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucrecia. Megan?
Hi, my name is Megan, and I joined the Equity Board to really start becoming an active member in my community, and to really engage minority voices and to keep moving forward to achieve progress and eventually reach the end goal of true equality.
Thank you so much. Preeti?
Hi, I'm Preeti, and I've lived in Issaquah for about 10 years and in the area for about 25 years. And I am committed to creating or leading change in the community where I live, and particularly around anti-racist efforts. I'm very committed to breaking down, I guess, the walls or, whatever, around systemic racism to make Issaquah a better place.
Thank you. Shay?
Hi, Shannon, and thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I actually joined the Equity Board for my children and my community. I moved here about 3.5 years ago, and the community was not nearly as diverse as it is now. And I noticed a lot of things that concerned me with relation to my kids. And Honestly, I want to contribute to a society and a community that is welcoming to all kinds of people and that will allow my kids to be their authentic selves so that they can grow up knowing that they're strong and they're beautiful and they're loved and they're welcome wherever they go.
Thank you so much. Tony?
Hey, Shannon. Glad you're doing this. The reason why I joined the Equity Board, I've been here in Issaquah for about 7 years, since 2015. I've enjoyed it here, but since that time till now and continuing on, definitely Issaquah needs equity, to be a welcoming place to all. When I moved here to Issaquah, I didn't really see any people of color here at all besides myself when in 2015. So it's nice to see it actually expanding and becoming more welcoming, but I think we definitely have more work to do. So I'm here to try and make not only the city of Issaquah, the state of Washington, and our United States and the whole world just a better place, just a more welcoming place for all.
Thank you so much. Let's see. I think that's it. But you know what? Just for kicks and giggles, Monica.
Just for giggles and kicks, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm the staff liaison here, Monica Negrillo. I had the opportunity to work with the Human Services Commission. I'm just so honored that I was just assigned to be the staff liaison to the Equity Board. But I am a big believer. I worked in human services for my entire life, from homelessness to substance use, mental health. I've seen the inequities in our system throughout my years from college to all of my jobs. And so I am passionate about this. I do want to be part of a solution. I do want to be a supporter and elevate the voices of our community members and make this place not just more inclusive, but more just for all of us. So definitely, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. I thought that you should chime in because I know how much you do. The stuff behind the scenes, but some of the stuff even outside of your duties as assigned, and so I want to make sure that people hear from you as well. Can you share screen?
Yes, I would love to.
Thanks. Let's jump right ahead to the equity framework screen.
Give me a moment.
And participants, if you look at the top of your screen, right above where the picture is, there should be a number that says 100% with a plus to the right and a minus to the left. If you want to blow the screen up for yourself, all you have to do is click that plus, and then you can have a bigger view of the slides that are being shown. Slide. So what we're going to be doing today is jumping into the exercise. So we're going to be looking at a couple of different case studies, and then we're going to be applying the tool, which is really a self-assessment tool. It's a tool that when used by other organizations, other decision-making bodies, other court systems, model court systems, having a tool like a framework will pull you back and ground you into some questions that I think are important to ask whenever you have questions before you, whenever you have a decision before you, whenever you have a challenge before you. Sometimes when we get into the mode of decision maker, when we get into the mode of discussion, we sometimes forget to ask critically important questions to pull us back into those things that might be around the corner that we don't see, or issues that could come up that we forget to ask ourselves every time. Slide. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at is really the model that the City Council did the training for and did the case study for. We're going to use that one model, which is really a combination of two different styles that we've morphed to create a hybrid of both that I think represent really what are the best practice. And then we're going to look at some actual situations read through those situations, and then apply the tool and have a robust conversation around decision making using those case studies. So this requires for us to demonstrate a racial equity lens. And some of those questions that we'll ask is specifically briefly describe the proposed action. Also, who are the racial or ethnic groups that are affected by this action? How will each group be affected? What are the racial disparities related to this project? And how will you track progress towards reducing disparities? Another question, how does the proposed action expand opportunity and access for individuals to city services? How does the proposed project promote racially inclusive collaboration and civic engagement? Is there community support for or opposition to the proposal, and why? How does the proposed action affect systemic changes? Specifically, does it address institutional racism? And what is your method for tracking progress? How does the proposed project support workforce equity and or contracting equity? And then finally, are there any unintended consequences for certain populations and or communities? Are there strategies to mitigate any negative impacts? And so this was the activity that was done. So slide. Other questions as part of the postcard model. Again, self-reflective questions for community decision making. Have I made any assumptions about the cultural identity, genders, abilities, identities, and or background of those impacted by my decision? What is my understanding of the group or groups being impacted by my decision? Are there unique cultural circumstances that I should consider? How is my decision going to specifically impact marginalized people? Have I considered how to mitigate, again, harmful results? How has the council or the equity board's past contact and involvement with marginalized stakeholder communities influenced, or how might it influence my decision-making process and findings? What evidence has supported every conclusion I've drawn, and how have I challenged unsupported assumptions? Hold on. So given these questions, what you see is it's going to force you to take a look at the issue in front of you and start asking those tough questions that people generally don't ask in a municipal body. They don't generally ask, well, what data informs the decision for why this thing comes to us? And if the city staff or city leaders engage in a specific action, how do we know that it's successful? Are we going to track and measure? Did we think about how the decision we're going to make today will impact folks that are marginalized? Have we thought about, before we do this thing, whether or not religion will matter, or income will matter, or people being housing insecure will matter, or people that are low income, or seniors, or disabled? Before we do this thing, have we really considered the impact on folks whose numbers may be small, but the impact for that small group may be outweighed? So you hear people talk about data and overrepresentation. And I always tell folks, never look at a population and say to yourself, well, do we really have to consider that group? They really are such a small number in our community. Do we really need to consider who those folks are, who, even if it impacted all of that group, is really only 20 or 30 or 70 people out of tens of thousands? And one of the reasons that I wanted to know, well, what brings you to the equity board? And all of you said the same thing. You're here to make sure that we center those voices and experiences that aren't considered, that you want to spread equity and really lean into and build out and fully flush out the idea that we can create a community that Dr. King called the beloved community, where people feel that they belong, that they have space, that they have standing, that they have ground, that they belong there fully and completely. They're not invited to the dance. They're one of the folks that are hosting. And so that's what I want to make sure that we center. So let's go ahead, slide. and jump into another set of those questions. How am I convinced that reasonable efforts have been made in an individualized way to match the needs of the entire community, particularly marginalized populations? Before we do that thing, have we thought about how some folks may look at the current social conditions and think, I'm an immigrant in this community. My family may be, when it comes to representation, my family may not all be documented. I may have have blended standing in my own family. Will families like that with blended immigrant status show up? Will they shrink away? Will they be afraid? Will folks who are domestic violence victims be able to fully lean into this thing that we may be considering? Have we heard from disparately impacted communities before we make any final determinations or decisions? And this will matter because now, as part of your recommendation, you can ask, have we talked to all folks in the community? What were some of the things that you did to reach out to all of those voices? And what were some of the things that they said? I want to make sure that we hear from those voices, even though sometimes they may be few, before we make a decision that impacts them. I always say, build nothing for them without them. Build nothing for them without them. I can't decide, you know what? I won a lottery. I'm going to bless Tony with a house. I know what'll be great. On HGTV, I saw these tiny houses. They were incredible. I'm going to build him a 317 square foot home for his family. And Tony may say, that'll be great. That'll be my he shed in the back. But something I'm going to move my whole family into. So sometimes you got to talk to people to understand or know before you decide. Is my own personal experience, my own culture, or my background preventing me from understanding and taking the cultural issues of marginalized stakeholders into account in deciding what issues exist for those disparately impacted? When you think about school resource officers, police officers, and lots of decisions like that, people have very strong opinions or feelings sometimes about those things. It's important to make sure we center those experiences, those insights and voices. Have we sacrificed the experience of marginalized people for the comfort and safety of those holding privilege, the majority population, and stakeholders not negatively impacted? Do we defer to the group that always, the squeaky wheel that always gets the oil? Are we doing the same thing, deferring to the squeaky wheel that always for hundreds of years gets the oil? Are we giving full credibility to those who are sharing concerns, even though their numbers might be small or quiet in our community? Every city, I'll promise you, has what they call frequent flyers. People that call all the time, and city and department folks know who they are when they call. Are we listening to all voices, even though some folks never call? We know that there are squeaky wheels out there, but we don't hear them squeak. They don't come into chambers. They don't come to council. They don't come to departments. What are the racial equity impacts of a particular decision? Who will benefit or be burdened by the particular decisions? And are there strategies to mitigate some of the unintended consequences? So those are the questions. And I want for us now to jump into the case study. I want for us to take a look at an example from the city of Newport Beach. And this is some actual policy and legislation that's been considered. I want you to take a look at it and start thinking now. And Monica, does everyone have a copy of this slide deck?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
It's been published, yep.
Good. So then you have the ability to take a look at the questions, but I want you to consider the questions. But now we're going to take some time to read through on your own, and then we're going to engage in the robust conversation around what's missing, who might be hurt by these, who might be helped most. What are we, are we considering all voices? Whose voices are missing? So we'll start asking some of those questions. So go ahead and take the next few minutes. We'll read through the document and then we'll start our discussion. So you can follow along either on the PowerPoint, or you can open your own copy and read through on your own, and then we'll jump in. Monica, did we have this translated into Spanish?
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And it was posted on Friday.
Good.
Shannon, for the discussion, would you like me to stop sharing my screen?
No, keep that up because I want people to be able to refer back to it.
Okay.
And so this first example is just that page. Is everyone finished? Okay, good. So this is for consideration for public art and cultural, the Public Art and Cultural Facilities Fund. So what are some of the things that stand out? Does anything stand out? Do you think that this policy is sound as it stands? Does it demand questions? Do you have questions? What jumps out for you?
Shannon, I'm going to jump in with something because I realized we didn't cover with you the process for our board. I'm not sure if you're able to follow the chat. Board members will put in the chat if they have a comment or question. So are you able to follow that and call in?
Thank you.
Board members, thank you.
Yep.
I believe Shay had a question.
Okay.
The first thing I wanted to ask about was timing. And I'm not sure if that's something that these kinds of frameworks actually need to consider, but I know that it's an important factor for a lot of people. How much time are we going to have to devote to trying to make this work?
How much time to devoted to making the framework work?
Oh, well, not necessarily the framework, but a recommendation for a specific thing. And I guess my question is more so whether or not that's something that kind of gets teased out through the process, or do we kind of set that timeline at the start?
Yeah, I think that would probably be something that you set. So the way that it would work, though, is having this framework as a tool simply means that you will have a predetermined set of questions that would demand that you ask those deeper questions. So right now, you have a piece of policy in front of you that would dictate how the city of Newport Beach would go about the process of considering public arts and cultural facilities for the fund. And, right away, does it consider cultural difference? When it talks about cultural appropriateness, what does that mean exactly? Who decides that? Is there a diverse body that considers that? When you think about modality, then how does that matter? Does someone have to be formally trained in a particular genre of art? Does it consider all genres? Is it visual? Is it an aesthetic? Is it dance? Is it music? how might different communities be impacted? So the tool is really the questions that you would ask yourself and one another, and then apply to the policy in front of you. So if we think about those questions, so I'm going to throw some questions out so that you can look at the policy or this process before you and then consider that. So my first question with regard to this is, what are the racial equity impacts of a policy like this? How do you think Black and brown folks might be impacted by this?
And Shannon, are you able to
I'm
see
sorry.
the chat?
Yes.
Yep,
I was going to say Lucretia and
I'm
Preeti
going to
have
it now.
comments.
So Lucretia has a comment.
Thank you, Shannon. Yes, so those are precisely the questions that I would start to ask. In particular, I think I would ask, for example, how are they reaching out into the community to ensure that a wide variety of artists are made aware that the city has this intention to have artwork that is inclusive in the community. I would also ask questions like, if we are trying to have a variety of artists, who is doing the judging of whether the artwork is quote unquote good enough to invest in, right? Because I mean that's kind of the gist of this policy. And then also when we talk about value, it's interesting to me some of the words that are chosen here. The value of the proposed facility in economic, cultural, or neighborhood revitalization of the city, etc. I would have a question around that. I don't know that I have the words for it right now. I have like a 10-hour lap. Sorry, Shannon, I just flew in from far away, so I may not be making a lot of sense, but those are the things that I think I would ask. And lastly, I would also ask, for example, in some cultures, oral art, oral history is very important. And I would want to know if we are taking that into consideration, etc. Yeah.
Very, very good questions. Thank you. Very good comment. Preeti.
Yeah, I think I had similar reflections. I feel like there's a lot of words here in the criteria that have underlying assumptions, and it just makes me wonder, how are they going to implement these things? Are they going to default to white normative standards of art, or are they going to really be open to it? Like words like quality, experience, skill, accessibility, proper medium, cultural enrichment for whom, particular neighborhoods. There's so much there to unpack. Like, how are they going to make decisions with these words?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who will benefit or be burdened by this process? That's the question. Who will benefit most? Will anyone benefit more or less than others? Will anyone be burdened? That's one of the reflection questions. Is anyone monitoring the chat? Does anybody want to make a comment or have a question?
Hi, this is Elisa.
Mm-hmm.
My comments were similar to what was said before. I picked on, in particular, item number 3, the experience, skill, and ability of the artist to produce the work of art. And I think the reason that one stood out for me is that various mediums of art, so for example, street art, murals, have not always been valued as art, and have not always, even though they may have represented the community in which they were produced. And so just back to our original point of, nothing for them without including them. So if the community isn't being a part of determining what experience actually is and what is quality, then, who is benefiting from what's being produced?
Thank you for that, Elisa. Anyone else?
Shannon, this is Monica. I have another technical question. Were you able to see the comments from Tony? Or
the only ones that I see are Lucretia and Preeti.
okay, with your permission, I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment because I saw there were some notes popping up on my screen, and I believe that Tony might have just sent them to me. So I want to make sure he had to leave early, and I want to make sure that his comments are reflected. Is that okay?
Yeah, and make sure that when you have to the right in your box for the chat, the drop down will allow you to send to individual people again or to all panelists. Please make sure that you have all panelists clicked, because then I can be sure to see what you're typing. Otherwise, I won't see it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And again, as a quick reminder, please don't put any substantial notes in the comments so they can be reflected on the recording. But again, in this Tony's case, he had to leave, so he just wanted to make sure that he didn't have a chance to speak up so that his comments are noted. And so Tony says, my comment, consideration for the artists in the community, where will this be represented in the community for all to have access and so forth. And then he apologizes, he had to leave early.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I'll go back to sharing the screen.
Yep. The next reflective question is, are there strategies to mitigate unintended consequences? Do you see strategies in there to counteract any negative impact? So we've talked about the skill set with number 3 of the artist, and people, sometimes in the art world, part of the critical theory is you have to be as gifted as the artist in order to judge and be an arbiter of the artist. And, I was raised under this idea that everybody has an opinion and is entitled to one, and art is for all people, and people will see it in whatever way that they as individuals interpret it and find value in it. And then also, the proper medium, or whether or not it holds value or will bring value to the city. And some of you have talked about, who are deciding what constitutes value. What does value really mean in a community that's welcoming to everyone? So given that, are there strategies? Do you see strategies to mitigate unintended consequences where some people may be discriminated against inadvertently? Is there a trap door to catch something like that before it happens? Is that a question that you have? All right, Shay.
I would venture to look at this and say no, because I don't see anything that addresses like the, I guess you would say, environmental impacts that often are disproportionately misguided when it comes to locations. Some locations tend to have very strict rules on like the amount of dust, the amount of how much timing on the construction and all of that fun stuff. And one of the things that I didn't see here was something that would kind of look towards making that a factor that could potentially impact people who don't necessarily come to the meetings to address these kinds of things.
Thank you. Lucretia?
I pass since I've already spoken, but I'll speak again once it's the second go around.
Okay. Lorna? Lorna?
Sorry, I was talking without while I was muted. So I think in looking at this, one of the considerations and things that I would want, maybe I'm just a bit too concrete, is looking for specific information as to what cultures or what types of cultures, like some more parameters to help guide the process in this. So, more information on what kind of cultures are we looking at represented. Are we looking at native cultures, cultures that represent the community, What about as new cultures come in? Also, whose historical viewpoint are we looking at? So that is a huge factor for me in learning about history. And everyone talked about number three. Also, for me, one of the things was it was easily visible. So right away, all public artworks are not going to be addressing those people who might have vision, ability considerations. So I think I would want to have more parameters in place for this, for the criteria for what's sent out.
Very good. Thank you. Especially your call out on visibility, because if the expectation in an entire community is that you want to have the public arts there, if someone is vision impaired or hearing impaired or somehow impaired that it's not accessible to them, then this resource, this treasure of the community is going to be lost on lots of folks in the community. And so how do you make it accessible that people feel like they belong in the community? They feel like these gifts and treasures in the community are intended for their benefit as well. And so how do you close a gap like that? Thank you. That's great. Alisa?
Sure. I find this whole case study really interesting just because my daughter, who's in college, has been working on a project for the last year, talking to public artists and talking to them about how public art projects come to be, and especially through the lens of equity and marginalization. And one of the things that I would say I gleaned from that is the idea that a lot of the artists have expressed that often the people who are in the position to propose, pay for, decide on what art is selected have their own agenda and aren't necessarily from or part of the community or representing the community. And I would say to your question, one of the things that I think would help would be to, maybe have in place just some type of rules around who are the people who get to be the decision makers, even proposing the project. There were situations where the community were not happy that there was a public art project being brought into their community because they felt that it actually made their community look unattractive. So actually having the people who are in the community as the decision makers on everything about the project. Is there going to be a project? What's the subject of the project going to be? All of the things that are in this list, there needs to be decision makers from the community empowered to make those decisions.
And this is great. Thank you for that. Because what I'm hearing you all key up to do as an equity board now is really ask the staff some tough questions around accessibility, around representation, around again building this public asset where everyone accesses it and can also be represented. But I'm also hearing, even early, the makings of recommendations around even an art board that represents the diversity of the community, so that you have lots of different voices and lots of perspectives making judgment and talking about what value means to different communities, like different Black and Brown communities, street artists, Indigenous, Native artists, African American artists, women artists in these different groups. So I hear that even starting to form in your questions and comments. Thank you for that. Lucrecia.
Thank you, Shannon. So I find this study really interesting simply because I grew up peripherally engaging with Newport Beach. For those who don't know, Newport Beach is a very affluent, typically affluent community. When I lived in the LA area, it's part of Orange County, by the way, but I lived in the LA area, Newport Beach used to be through the early 2000s very European American. And so my comment comes from that knowledge. It could be that now the demographics have changed. I honestly don't know and didn't have the time to research what those demographics are now. But my question is around the way that artists are sometimes approached is come and entertain me in the way that I'm comfortable receiving your entertainment, right? And so I don't know quite how one would address that as an artist and or as someone who's not part of the community, but being invited to somehow contribute to this artwork that they're trying to bring into the city. How do you not objectify the people that you're trying to kind of bring and include into the community? And I guess I would have questions around that, you know, like what is the purpose of this artwork? Is it to educate? Is it to be representative of the community, which would then kind of perpetuate what already is? So I think those are the questions that I would have in addition to what I said earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give one more final question. Have we heard from disparately impacted communities before we make any final determinations or decisions? When you look at this, how does that question reflect for you when you hear that? Have we heard from disparately impacted communities before we make a final decision or determination? Do you look at this and feel like they've talked to those folks? They've heard from those voices and gotten those perspectives. What would your guesstimation be when you see this? And I'm monitoring the box. Make sure that if you're typing that it's to all panelists that we can see. Any questions or comments? Does something come up for you?
Shannon, this is Lucrecia speaking again. I can't help myself. Anybody please interrupt me. But yes, that's exactly where my questions were coming from. The comment that I made just now, which is, you know, like, are they taken into consideration? It's obviously not 100% of the same people. There are variances within even the same culture. And so obviously for me, that is not something that I feel like they've reflected upon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lucrecia, give me an example. Give me at least one example that when you look at this, it makes you feel like, it causes you to believe that they've not talked to or gotten feedback or collaborated with a very diverse community with marginalized or disparately impacted folks.
Well, it's just that it's missing. There is nothing, right? I don't feel like there's anything there that says that they've actually even taken input from the community with regards to how they're even going to acquire this art. Like I mean, to me, this is just, it's almost like legalese, right? Like they just have to have some sort of policy, so they put this together without much consideration. That's my interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Even when you think about art as the old canon, Monet, Van Gogh, Matisse, that's what comes to mind for me. Preeti?
I think building off of those previous comments, the absence of any mention of diversity, of equity, of community in these considerations is just a red flag that they're not thinking about it and they may not care about it. You know, they don't lean on any kind of pre-existing documents or, you know, equity values or guiding principles anywhere in that. And that's just glaring to me.
Yeah. Shay?
Yes, also to add to that, I see a lot about the aesthetics and the cost and very little about impact. And that's what really kind of threw a monkey wrench in what I was seeing. I was like, it's a lot of the same stuff that you normally see, but nothing related to the people that are going to have to look at this on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Lorna?
I thought it was funny that they called out vandalism and theft so clearly and took time to call that part out, but then didn't put better parameters for, what kind of experience, what kind of art, what cultures, whose viewpoint, what community members are coming into it. But yet, vandalism and theft were called out.
Yeah. Diversity and inclusion, but vandalism and theft.
Exactly. So weird.
Yeah. Good. All right. Let's go to the next exercise then, Monica. Next slide. It would be for Caterpillar. So take a few minutes, folks. Let's read over that, and we're going to apply that same lens to this example.
And while you're doing that, Shannon, I'm going to do a brief time check to let you know that we have about 30 more minutes left for this agenda item. Not sure if that helps you or not, but I thought I would do a time check.
I'm keeping a close eye.
Thank you. You're great. And this is such a great conversation.
Monica, can you switch to the next slide?
Yes.
And if you don't mind, when you're finished, just type the word done in the comment box. For those of you who are done while the others complete their reading, go ahead and take a look at some of those questions, those self-reflection questions. And for this process, for this initiative, start thinking about how you might advise a leadership team, a group of directors or managers on the strengths of what you see and maybe what's missing. I think we've got everyone that's done. Okay, so let's go ahead then and jump into our discussion. So go ahead, make sure that you're clicking for all panelists. If you have a comment or a question, go ahead and type that into the box and we'll get started. I'll start with a question and let you all think about that question as you respond. Are we giving full credibility to those who are sharing concerns, even though their numbers might be small or quiet? So when you look at this, and out of 30 vice presidents, 7 are women. And if 1 or 2 of those women or all 7 express a concern, that number is small out of 30. That comes up sometimes, I think, as a question. Well, I know it does in the workforce. So given that, do you see a mechanism so that the folks who self-identify as women then are able to have access to senior leaders? Do they have access to the C-suite so that if there are challenges they see across the workforce, particularly as it impacts women, do you see a mechanism for them to raise that concern? And this is a global program, especially for employee resource groups. When it comes to role models and creating future opportunity, does it appear that there's something built within this process, within this initiative, whether it's the inclusion survey, employee resource groups, role modeling, flexible work? Does anything come up for you? All right, Shay, question?
Yes, I almost wonder how they determine who gets into these programs, and additionally, how these ERGs and resources that people have access to are communicated out so that the entire workforce can learn and grow or utilize some of these resources. And then lastly, I I always have a concern about retention when it comes to careers. If people say, for example, those 7 women leave that C-suite position, are they replacing them with another 7 women, or are they replacing them with the first person that applies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or are they seeking to look at a diverse pool versus just putting the next person that wants to come into the position?
Yeah.
Because that
Excellent.
7 could easily drop down to 3.
Yep. And that happens a lot because they don't think of succession planning. They're not building their bench strength. And then the other thing that comes up, and I'm so glad that you keyed in, Shay, on the role models, because when you look at the levels, so you won't have someone that's on the line that's an individual contributor that's going to be modeling and mentoring with somebody that's a vice president. So what does that look like? I mean, this is an organization, even though they have 120,000 employees, my question is what departments or teams are those women on, and who has access to leadership and development? Because role model is a leadership part of leadership development. And so does that mean that you already have to be a leader, or they have to identify you as a potential future leader? How do you grow opportunity for people who may be more entry level, which is where most of those women are likely? I just work with a very large multi-billion-dollar construction firm, and their women are not always in those professional technical roles. Alisa.
I appreciated the fact that they were leveraging employee resource groups since, and basically anybody can join the employee resource group. And so it, has the opportunity to be representative, should people join it. I also appreciated the fact that they talk about doing a survey. So they're measuring their results and trying to measure and then refine as they go.
Yeah, great call out, because it's in the annual inclusion survey that the whole staff is asked that question. And then my question is, does that survey allow for them to do a disaggregate of data to break women's responses out and to look at women across the organization, even at different levels? And remember, there's intersectionality. How are women who are part of the majority population, how are their responses different than women of color? Shay, another question? Okay.
Yes, because this one is a tough one even for my company. A lot of times it kind of comes down to whether or not um they and I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly how to make this comment, but essentially it also kind of comes down to what timing they decide to do those surveys. For example, are they providing those surveys when everybody gets their raise for the year? Or are they providing those surveys at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year or when you first become an employee? Or are they waiting 3 months in when you've had some time to actually learn your role? I always find those surveys hard to manage in those respects. And I'm curious as to whether or not they pick the timing in an effective way that doesn't always pick the timing when people are happiest. People are happy when they're getting more money. They're not so happy, in that fourth quarter when they're stressed out and their work life is a little tougher and they're trying to balance out a little more easily. So are they really getting true answers from people?
Mm-hmm. Good. Lucrecia?
I think one of the things that I would encourage Caterpillar to include in this policy that they have is how are they reaching out into the world to get more women in general into the pipeline, right? Because if they're what they have identified is that they're trying to have more women in leadership roles, how are they growing that pipeline, right? Because if you're just looking back into, the current employees, and that's great because you need to kind of, grow them from within, but also what are they doing in regards to bringing more people in, right? To make it more representative and gender balanced. And then I don't know if how they came to the decision that their main focus is to diversify through women. It could be that they do have an ethnically diverse population. I don't know their particulars, but that is something that I would ask. If I had input into their culture, I would be asking, why are we focusing on women? And are there other groups that need to also be included and represented in this policy? And I also think it's important to point out that it is great to see that their policy is very female friendly. But my last question would be, okay, so we're working on this. What next, right? Because this can't be the sole focus, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly?
I also am happy that they have an inclusion survey and that if they're collecting data, that's very powerful. I would love to see or wonder if they thought about having the next level of, moving it from the individual talking to their manager on what action they took to documenting that and bringing it to the leadership to see trends and opportunities and things that they've learned from those discussions. So that it's a rotating, it's a wheel of learning for everybody.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And I'd probably follow that up, Kelly, and ask if they're going to publish a dashboard. Are they going to share that data so that there's some transparency and accountability? And what actions specifically they'll take based on what they've learned. And I would want to know when they're going to come back and report on the impact of those efforts. And then finally, are they going to do that? It's an annual inclusion survey. Are they going to publish that information so we can look at year-over-year success? Mm-hmm. Elisa?
Sure, one last comment. I appreciated the role model section because while they do point out that they only have 7 of the 30 as vice presidents, they also talk about the fact that they're doing the lead project that they're doing in order to help those provide female role models so that female employees can become can advance and can move up. And so I think that's a positive, but to your point, right, the proof is in the results. And so certainly I would expect that they're going to publish, this is how our diversity has changed. This is the results of that survey. And these are the numbers now. They used to be 7. Now there are this many at some point in the future.
Yeah. Elisa, how many of those 7 women that are VPs are women of color?
Well, and that's another good point, right? Our case study doesn't give us the details of what they've been reporting. They talk about how they certainly have the data from their diversity studies, et cetera, but obviously our case study doesn't say what level of detail they're sharing, but that will be an important level of detail to see.
Especially that they have 120,000 people across a range of products and services around the world. The UK has 10,000, but there's 110,000 that we don't know. And are those 7 localized in just the UK, or are they, because they're talking about globally that there are 30 VPs, but where are those 7 women? Helen?
Sorry. Yes, I was going to talk about the number and like what the 7 represents and what their level of influence really is in the bigger picture, and whether that really for those who are looking to be mentored, if that resonates with them, and what are their areas of work anyway. I believe that it's not just mentoring in how are you managing work-life balance, it's in career, it's in a whole lot of other things. So I think looking a little more deeply into what's the quality of these, and are they aligning and matching them to those who need that support, and is it are the 7 spread out enough to be sufficient? That's what I'm saying, and their quality and what the areas are that will speak to the people that are needing that mentorship, and just being relevant really, and not just to tick the box that these people who are going to mentor and in what area and is it needed. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Laura?
For whatever reason, seeing the word female so many times did not make me feel like they were referring to people in the LGBTQ community. I somehow made the assumption this was about cisgender female. And so it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable at how many times they called out female, and then especially as the start of it talked about childcare and, you know, all those things. And so I was like, so I think the assumption, to me, it felt like the assumption was that the female was going to be hetero female.
Yeah.
And also in reading this, I don't know who the target audience is, but the reading level is definitely a very highly educated person. So I don't know what kind of jobs, if this is all in leadership roles, and maybe that's what it is, because it's all about vice presidents and so forth. So I wasn't sure if this is just recruitment for corporate type jobs.
And this is, I'll tell you, this is supposed to be for women across their entire global workforce at every level.
I don't know how accessible this is.
Thank you. Christina?
Yeah, this it sounds amazing, but I just thinking how these big companies managing to control and to involve in people on diversity, right? Because they want diversity, but what are the activities and strategies that they are using for put people together and keep working together nicely and yeah, feeling comfortable. So I just wondering about this because I think this is our big problem in this community.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. And the other, Christina, the other thing that comes up for me is it seems that a lot of these things are require for you to mostly be first shift. If you work second shift, if you work third shift, are all of this, is all of the mentoring, is all of these programs, all these opportunities. If you're a third shift person, where are all these other people, and where is the richness of these programs? Or is it just for people that are first shift? And the people who oftentimes work on the line, work in factories, work in productions, you know, office jobs, people are 8 till 5. Administrative finance are 8 to 5. But if your desire is to grow up through the company, to move up, and you're on a shift that's not that day shift, how do you have access to those opportunities to be able to do something other than the things that are probably lower wage and lower level in terms of leadership roles on those shifts? So that also makes it tough. Let's see. Alisa?
Yeah, so I'm questioning myself on something, which is that we said there were 7 women out of the 30 vice presidents, and I think implied in that, in our comments, is that that should be a 50-50 split. But then I have to wonder, well, you know, is there any cultural bias in there that we have where maybe in our culture, yes, 50% of women want to be in those roles, right? Or that's a good balance to be. But if I were in another culture, am I necessarily the person who wants to be in those roles? Like I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but are we assuming that that women want to be in 50% of those roles?
Or and even if they don't want to in particular regions, are the opportunities open for people to relocate that do? Yeah. We'll go to Lucrecia and then Christina again, then we'll do our wrap up.
Yeah, I think that I would like to wrap up by saying that when we look at these case studies, I start to apply the same sort of questions to ourselves, right? So for me, I want to take what I find and what we have identified as positives from this policy and, you know, kind of like you table that for when we go to develop things. And then the comments that we've made that have not worked out, to remember those as well when proposing policy and or procedures that we would like to see implemented here for ourselves. And I want to go back to the idea that it isn't just the people who are already working, 120,000 who are already working, or the 7 women who've been, you know, who have made it up to represent, you know, a quarter of their leadership team. But where is this company tapping into to ensure that they are bringing more women into that pipeline, through the pipeline? And when is it appropriate to start to question, is it just about a male-female ratio, and or is it also important to include other voices that they haven't identified as needing to be represented?
Yeah. Let's see. Christina?
Yes, just I want to say that I want to emphasize that it is important not to use labels on the people, because maybe today they can be super, but tomorrow I want to be like, or they want to be like manager, obviously. So yeah, this is really important, because maybe today I cannot speak properly, but I don't want to be here all the time. So I'm thinking about my kids, you know, when kids think, oh, they have some disabilities, but this can be changed, and we are here for help. So, yeah.
Thank you. Slide. So just to wrap up, the whole goal of having this tool and this set of questions is really so that all of you can proactively make sure that you're injecting equity into your deliberation, into your decision making. We want to make sure that you're preventing continued harm to marginalized communities and making sure that equity and diversity as values are seen in action. So it's not the thing that you talk about passively, it's the thing that you do deliberately when you're asking these kinds of questions, when you're raising concerns or highlighting what you think is a great job, and then following it up with how we do something even better. Slide. Finally, so when you did this exercise, I want you to think about, were there any items missing for you? Any items that were not helpful or that were helpful or not helpful? Any questions, comments, or thoughts that you have? So I want you to take some time. I know we're at time. Slide. And what they want in terms of recommendations, they receive training and discuss framework, incorporate feedback from Equity Board, and then make recommendations to City Council to pilot this model. So, so you've had the activity. Oh, go ahead. So you can slide. So you've had the activity, you've done the exercise, but what they like to do next is present recommendations to the City Council, train staff and pilot framework, and then return to board with findings to refine the framework. So the council has had their own recommendations and their own experience. Now you've had your own experience, and we're hoping to have some recommendations. Do you find value in having a series of questions as a tool that will cause you to go back and to reflect? Because the tool is that list of questions. The tool is you always having that list of questions that are maybe on a card or on the screen, so that when actual policy, programs, or processes are put in front of you, you'll use those questions and ask those tough questions, so that then that becomes part of the intentional injection of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice into your conversation, so that it's not something that you have sometimes in the conversation, but we want to make sure that you have it as a tool to always incorporate it into your conversations. Preeti.
Yeah, so I just had, I was looking at the wrap-up slide, and there's this, bullet around preventing continued harm to marginalized communities. And it's making me think about what is the city's posture with respect to equity? And it seems like that's a pretty low bar in terms of just preventing continued harm. Is there, as part of this work, do we see a shift? Like, do we want to go beyond that and actually change that to and I saw this in some places, like decrease the inequity. So that's a bit higher bar. How do we, bring the marginalized groups up? And to me, that preventing continued harm isn't that bar to bring things up. So I'm not in disagreement with any of these questions and the way of thinking in this tool. I just, I think we can do better than preventing continued harm.
The goal isn't to prevent it, it's to completely eliminate it.
Yes.
It's not to lower it, but to completely eliminate it.
So to that point, I don't know if there's a way to inject in these questions then something that is more proactively getting us there.
Good. Anyone else? I'm still monitoring the chat box for questions or comments. And we don't have to have all of those answers today. So what you can do is reflect, because I know it's a lot when you do it, and we spent 90 minutes together. So I want you to go back and take a look at the case studies. Take a look at some actual policies or decisions that you've made or things you've considered as a body in your short tenure, and look at those questions, and let's determine whether or not there are other questions or additional questions we might consider. Go ahead, Monica.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Yes, I think I wanted to, from great conversation this evening, great questions that you all brought up. Just wanted to talk a little bit about, add to some of the things that Shannon said in terms of next step. City Council and also provide a few reminders. As you may recall, City Council brought up the need for the city to create an equity framework actually last year in July. And they've been waiting for this item for about a year. The intent with creating an initial equity framework is really to provide a tool for City Council, for other boards and commissions, for other departments of the city to start asking these questions every time they have a project going on, whether that is creating a new street light somewhere, or whether that is implementing a new HR policy or arts, as you have seen some examples. And so the hope tonight from you is that you're going to bring additional questions to that framework that was discussed. As you may recall, at the last meeting, when we discussed this, you have chosen the Portland model, which Shannon provided in detail for you tonight. And so, for example, we had a great question and idea to implement from Pretty. Can we add something that's going to proactively address not just preventing more harm, but actually creating justice, right? So that's great. Do you have other questions, comments tonight? And then the big question for you is, do you feel comfortable recommending to City Council that they pilot this Portland model with the rest of the city, let's say for 6 months, for 9 months, and then departments get a chance to try it out, and they will come back to you with a report, let's say after 6 or so months, where then you can take it again from here and make additional recommendations for improvement. Does that make sense on what we are hoping for tonight?
And actually, what you have is a hybrid of both of those models.
Exactly. Thank you, Shannon. You already did that work in providing that hybrid. Yes, thank you for that clarification. And also with that, there's tentatively a council meeting scheduled for the month of June to bring back the recommendations from you tonight.
So I guess what we'll ask you then is, given the exercise and the robust conversation, now you've had a chance to use the model. The council has had a chance. The council was comfortable with it, and proposed to then move it to you. They want to know if you are comfortable with that. At this point, they would like to pilot this and have others use it as the adopted framework, see how it works, and then make recommendations for tweaking it at a future time. But to at least put something in flight now that it's been held for almost 12 months. Elisa.
Sure. I just wanted to make a quick comment. The question that was asked was, could we add something to, like, we don't just want to prevent. And I think one of the questions that's there in the model kind of addresses that, because it says, how does the proposed action expand opportunity and access for individuals to city services? So I kind of take that as the question to address. We're not just trying to meet.
Yeah.
And I think it would be great for us to pilot this model.
Good. Katie?
Just one other quick comment. I was reflecting on one of the questions around the different, like marginalized groups. And I do wonder if it might be helpful as a tool to perhaps have a list of different groups, thinking about religion, culture, gender, race, intersectionality. So there's some prompts there to really help kind of walk people through those different types of groups as they use the tool.
Very good. Thank you. Kelly?
Is there, I was really struck by the comment about a dashboard. Because it just, everybody can learn from it. So is there a possibility to build a dashboard for this? I get that it's unclear at this point, but to me, somehow having a feedback loop on it could be very, very useful.
We could certainly do that at the midway point, and then at the conclusion of a pilot.
Yeah.
To have a survey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And data, right? They'll have at least a little bit.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you for that recommendation. I'll pivot back to you, Monica.
Thank you very much, Shannon. So, board members, if there are no other comments, I think then the question for you is, we can do a formal vote and see if we would need a motion to recommend to City Council using as a pilot the proposed tool with the added comments that you just had tonight. So we will implement those comments. So we would need someone to make a motion for that, and then to second it, and then we can have a formal vote.
A motion that we recommend the proposed plan to the city in order for them to adopt it and put out a pilot for us.
I can second the vote.
Thank you very much. And so with that, please indicate if you are there. Those in agreement, please say yay, and also yes, please note through.
Yes.
Yes, all of it. Anyone who is
It's a
not
yes
in
for me.
favor of these recommendations? So I heard yes, I think for everyone, anyone who, and I see also people putting in the chat yes. And I don't see anyone who said no or anyone who's abstaining. So, okay, so thank you very much, board members. Then we will recommend this to City Council with the added comments from tonight. And we will recommend it as a pilot, and we will suggest that this to be brought back with data after it's been piloted for at least 6 months. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Shannon, we so appreciate your time with us tonight. We hope you'll come back.
I absolutely will be, because we've got a needs assessment to collaborate on.
We have a needs assessment to work on, and we are very excited, and we look forward to that. So with that, Shannon, you're more than welcome to stay with us for the rest of the evening, or if not, I know you're a very busy lady, so we will not be offended if you need to leave, but thank you very much. Thank you. And with that, Shay, I'm gonna pass it back to you so we can go through the rest of the agenda. Thank you very much, board members. This was a great conversation tonight.
Thank you all, and thank you, Monica. Thank you, Shannon. We appreciate it. Our next agenda item actually is for officer selections. So Monica will facilitate that for us, so I'll send it back to you.
Thank you very much, Shay. So this is Monica again, board members. So I want to provide a little bit of background information as you are still a very new board. April and May are important dates for city boards and commissions. Typically, terms for board members expire in April and new terms begin in May, and that happens on an annual basis. Also on an annual basis, it's when we select chairs and vice chairs, so officers for the position. The equity board is a little bit different because you started as a board for less than a year. You just started for 6 months ago or so. And so for you, your terms did not expire. Actually, this year we did have 2 positions that did expire just because we created the board as a with a stagnated role just to make sure that not all positions expire at the same time. However, both board members expressed interest in continuing, so they will just continue with us. And so similarly, because you've been functioning for more than a year, typically in May, so next year in May also, you will be selecting a chair and a new chair and a new vice chair. This year, we did check in with both our chair and vice chair, Shay and Tony. They both expressed interest in continuing to serve as chair and vice chair. And so unless anyone here has any objections, I don't believe that we need to do a formal selection. I just want to call that out, that we are very grateful and thankful to Shay and Tony for being willing to continue. And then if you are okay with that, then I would say we don't need to do any voting process. Just acknowledge that we will do this next year in May. So any objection to what I just said, or comments or questions? Lucrecia, I see you have a comment.
Yes, I would. First, I want to say yes. I'm very grateful that Shay and Tony would like to continue on in their roles. I would also like to remind us that one of the things that I recall coming from the community is that we would like to shake things up a little bit and model different ways of conducting these meetings, and therefore the importance of also sharing in the responsibility of the roles that typically are the leadership roles, chair and vice chair, meaning that I would really like to see people who are typically not ones to raise their hands for these positions in the future, so for next year. And I want to hold us to a standard where we're growing the people that we have in this group, all of us, because I just think that it's important to model that for the rest of the community and to help those of us grow into those positions. That's my only comment.
Thank you very much, Lucrecia. Very good comments. And I do believe and I hope, as as this board continues to work together and as you build trust among one another, and you learn more about the city, how you're going to start bringing those creative ideas on what are different ways to go about leadership in boards, commissions, city, and so forth, and how can you support one another. So thank you for that. Okay, so if there are no other comments for now, then again, I would like to, oh, Shay, you have a comment.
Yes, just one quick one. I just want to remind people, as much as I love being the chair of this board, it would not hurt my feelings if someone else wanted to do the job, only because I don't want to limit anyone from feeling like they can't do it or they don't have the opportunity to do it. As Monica, I'm sure will tell you, this is work that I do on a regular basis and that I love. And because I love it, I know that I'm not always the best person to be out in the front. So with that in mind, just keep in mind, I will still hold all of you in such high regards if you decide that I am not the perfect person for your chair, or not necessarily perfect, but at least the person that you should keep.
Thank you very much, Shay. You are just so humble and awesome and amazing. And again, I do invite others if they would like to say any comments. But we are very grateful. I know that there's a lot of work behind the scene, and you've been doing such an amazing job in learning all the technicalities behind this and just chairing this board. And yeah, I'm personally very, very grateful, and you're so graciously doing it. And yeah, thank you. Okay, so no other comments. Then again, thank you very much once again for continuing the leadership on this. And I look forward to seeing how your first year as a board, you've been already doing so many amazing things, and I have no doubt that you will continue. So thank you very much, board members. This concludes then the topic on officer selections. And next, back to you, Shay, for the next topic.
Thank you so much, Monica. And again, we appreciate everybody's contributions tonight. Our next agenda item is the committee report. And Monica, I'm sorry, do we have anything to go over tonight?
A little bit, yes. I would like to invite Lucrecia and Christina to summarize the committee meeting if they would like to, and I'm happy to help as well, but just would love to provide that opportunity. Christina, Lucrecia, Helen, and Ray are part of the community engagement committee, and Helen was not able to join us at the last meeting. That's why I'm inviting only Lucrecia and Christina at this time. Lucrecia, Christina, would you like to?
I can go. So we had our first meeting, and what we discussed were identifying organizations that we would like to partner with to learn about the equity and inclusion policies that they have in place. We identified not only large businesses and corporations that are that make their home and or their U.S. home base here in Issaquah, like Costco and REI, et cetera, but also small family-owned and operated businesses to see and encourage them to start having these conversations in their places of employment. And then we also had a robust discussion about the importance of making our committee known to the community at events like farmers market, library, schools, etc. And then there was a discussion about the importance of having cultural conversations. And I believe that we have a pretty robust list of potential discussions that we could propose to have for the community, with the understanding that we would not be the one solely responsible for facilitating those meetings with the community, but rather sharing that responsibility with others. And I believe that, oh, and then the other thing is that we have chosen as a committee to model the idea that we could share the responsibility of chair for that committee. And Ray will be the chair for the first go round for the first 2 to 3 meetings, and then we will decide who will lead the following meetings and so forth in an effort to help build our skills as a committee. Is there anything else that I missed, either Cristina or Monica?
I think you say everything. Oh, yeah. Resume properly. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you, Lucrecia. Great work. And so, board members, the committee will provide, our hope is that at the next month, we'll come to you with recommendations from the committee on perhaps a plan for the remainder of the year. Thank you. Back to you, Shay.
Thank you. And my apologies for that delay there. And it looks like we still have about 7 minutes to go over the staff report. Monica, I didn't see that you had a whole lot, but I would say let's group the staff report and other business or announcements into the same one.
Yes, thank you. I did not have anything in writing at the time of the agenda when the agenda was publicized, but since Friday, I do have a couple of updates for you on the staff report that I would like to make verbally. One is actually regarding recruitment at the city level, and that is for both staffing and boards and commissions in particular. Currently, as I just mentioned, the annual board and recruitment period just ended for all the boards and commissions. We did see an increase in diversity, at least folks experiencing interest. However, more can be done, and we are genuinely interested in the city to have more diversity on all boards and commissions, not just on the Equity Board or just on the Human Services Commission. And so currently, the Parks Board is recruiting for a few board members. And so just wanted to make that announcement. If you know anyone, if you know anyone who may be interested in serving on the Parks Board, would love to encourage community members to apply. I will also follow up with an email. I'm waiting for some information that I would like to follow up. So we would love to just expand that. And if you don't mind sharing with anyone that you may know. Similarly, the city has numerous positions, paid positions open. And so again, I will follow up with an email, but feel free, please spread the word if you know anyone. Again, we would love to look for alternative ways to recruit other than just the typical mainstream ways. So would love your input on that and other suggestions and ideas as you might have. So that's one aspect of a staff report announcement. The second one, and I'm not sure if we're going to have time for discussion tonight on this, but if there's interest from the board, we can have a more robust conversation about this next month as well. The city is making preparations to transition board and commission meetings to in-person meetings. City Council started meeting in person in March, and the plan for the boards and commissions to start meeting in person is July. So if all goes planned, our board will meet for the first time in person that first Wednesday in July, which I believe it is July 6th. What that means for this board is that board members and staff will be at the city in person, while we are going to provide a hybrid model for public to join. So public will have the opportunity to join by phone, video, or in person. However, as board members and as staff, we will be in person. This may create some transition and difficulties for some board members. The city, if you may remember, the city has a stipend program that covers childcare or transportation for everyone. And so we would love to encourage board members to consider that. And of course, we would also love to hear more comments from board members. I do want to express, though, that I believe the city has limited options with allowing hybrid opportunities for board members. My understanding is that the Open Meeting Act is a state legislation. The governor, as you know, the governor issued the proclamation that allows us temporarily to meet virtually due to the pandemic. And as that is being lifted, state law requires us to have in-person meetings. So at least that is my understanding. I am very, very open, though, to bring more feedback back from what we hear from you. But that's where we are currently. So with that, I'm going to pause in case there are any comments or questions, and we can provide more information in the upcoming months for sure. And I think Lucrecia had a question. Do I see the chat correctly? And then Shay.
Thank you, Monica. Just quickly, do we have a recess during the summer at all? And if not, how does vacation play into summer months and the requirement to attend in person? And the question is also, I understand what you just explained, but like, are there exceptions made? Like if you're on vacation but would like to attend, can you attend at least as a panelist, as a community member?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, those are great questions,
Absolutely.
and I'm happy to seek more guidance on that. But yes, at least, yeah, you should be able, at least as an attendee, to join. I don't see why not if you're away and you're interested in doing, right? Otherwise, the nice thing is that all of the meetings are recorded, so we would always, if somebody needs to miss a meeting, we would recommend that you watch the video and then provide input afterwards. In terms of recess, typically August and or December are months when we can decide as a board if we want to have a recess. So the month of August is typically a recess month as an option, and December. But also it depends on the work load and work plan and the interest of the board. And I see Shay, Elisa, you also have comments.
Yes, I just had a quick comment just to remind people that we also have the stipend available. So if there are some things that might be impeding your ability to attend the in-person meetings, then there are some arrangements that the city's made for us to make sure that we can all get there. And then, of course, I'm always happy to volunteer myself to help in that process. So if anyone needs help getting back and forth, or if we need to work through how to manage like childcare or something like that, then we can totally work together on that.
Thank you very much, Shay. And in my follow-up email to all of you, I will also add the stipend information on how to sign up to that as a refresher. And Elisa.
Whether it be because of in person or some other reason, can you also refresh us, even in the mail, it doesn't have to be tonight, what the process is if there are board members who are unable to continue as a result, whether it's because of this or any other reason?
Right, exactly. So typically we would hear for that is typically you would just send us an email, typically the staff liaison receives an email and somebody, you just let us know. It's pretty informal. You don't have to follow a formal process, either email or just contact us. And yeah, situations sometimes do come up.
I meant the board, how does the board replace that person and how do they continue with the work that they were doing?
Yeah, that's another great question, Elisa. So typically it depends, like in this case, let's say the equity board, you have 9 members and 3 alternates. So you have a total of 12 members. So if we have, let's say, one member having to leave during the year when it's not the recruitment period, so if they cannot wait until next year, which would be April, if somebody cannot serve until next April, then we can decide, depending on what's on the work plan for the board, we can decide to see if we will replace that position during mid-year recruitment, or we are just going to wait until April, because perhaps if we have enough alternates to serve as regular members, then we may consider that we are not going to do a recruitment mid-year. However, let's say if we have a larger number of people leaving mid-year, then we will just do a recruitment outside of the typical recruitment period. Does that help a little bit?
Yep, that answered both sides of the question. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you so much, Elisa. Lorna.
I was just wondering, you'd mentioned that we could talk about a potential break in August and or December. When would that conversation take place?
Another great question. So we can even just do it now if it's as easy as you all know your calendar and there's a preference for us to take a break in August. We can do it now. We can also check in next month or even in July. So there's no really a big formal process. It's really for us to check in. How are your vacations, board members? How are you feeling? Do you feel like we need to take a break to recharge? And, you know, we say August and December because typically those are months where city council takes a brief recess, and it's kind of like nice to align it. But if you as board, you come and say, you know what, for all of us, we all have, let's say, vacations in July, and we would prefer that July, we miss July, then we can also adjust that way. So yeah, with that, I think feel free to all of you think a little bit. I know this is a lot of information, a lot of changes all of a sudden. So feel free to just think about, check in with your families and with your calendars, and I'd say we can check back in next month. Does that help? Yeah, Lorna, please.
I was just going to say, if we were voting, because I've already sent you what my absence days are, and right now it had already been June and August, because in August I was going to be out of the country, but in July I was planning on doing it remotely. Because I was also going to be on vacation that week since it's close to 4th of July. So I was just going to let the group know, if you do vote in June, I am happy to take a break anytime. May, June, June, July, or August during the summer months. So.
Thank you. Elisa.
And maybe it may be a good exercise to get everyone to send you, Monica, their vacation schedules if they have anything planned, because if we're in a situation where there's not going to be able to be quorum in a given month, that would be a good month probably to take a break.
Great idea, suggestion, Elisa. Yes. Yeah, I'll follow up. When I follow up in the email, I'll probably ask for everybody's plans for the summer as well. It sounds good. Okay, great conversations and comments. Lucrecia, you have one more.
Monica, my understanding that you're going to check to see if we can attend virtually if we're out of reach for the summer months. Is that correct?
Yes, I will follow up with that.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if we're stating what our summer plans are, but I will be gone the month of July.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll follow up with the email for everyone so we can have that from everyone. Okay, great questions. Oh, Helen. Oh, no, I thought you were perhaps saying something. Oh, no, okay. Thank you.
Speaking to my daughter, she was asking me for something.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. So I think that concludes board members, my staff report. I appreciate, we went a little bit over a few minutes, but I appreciate the time in providing this information to you. And I think that's it for tonight.
All right. Well, if does anyone have anything else before we hop off? All righty. Then I would say we can go ahead and adjourn. Our next meeting is currently scheduled for June 1st, 2022. So we'll be right at the beginning of the month, and we're ending tonight's meeting at 8:06. Thank you all for being here, lending your support, your comments, your questions. We appreciate all your hard work here.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Bye,
good
everyone.
evening.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Well, Monica, the last